All right, Wednesday, February the 3rd edition of the Carolina Weather Video. Meteorologist Matthew East here along with you. Rain and thunderstorms, your forecast highlight today. I'll talk about that. Plus, we'll look at a potential storm system in the Sunday time period. A lot of cold air, maybe some wintry precip chances as well as we get into next week. A lot to talk about here in the latest edition of the video. Now, warm front lifting through the region. It has just cleared through the I-40 corridor over the past hour or so as I cut the video here during the 5 a.m. hour. You can notice some fog there evident from the Greensboro tower camera, but notice the wind out of the southeast at 12 miles per hour. That is indicative that the warm front has lifted north of that area. Yesterday we had kind of some stubborn clouds through most of the day. Really, the forecast behaved about as expected there. There's your Charlotte time lapse. It was a cooler day with a bit of a wedge scenario in play. And in response to that wedge, there's your cooler air. Had that northeasterly flow in place here for a lot of the region there in the favored cold air damming spots. Now you got outside of the wedge and you had Columbia at 74. It was still in the 60s, well up into the 60s near the Carolina coast, but certainly a cooler day for the foothills in the Piedmont, west of and north of Interstate 85 especially. There's your 50s for highs around the Triad area, even 48 in North Wilkesboro, and 50s to low 60s around the Charlotte zone yesterday. But now the south wind back in place as a warm front continues to clear on through the area. There's your temperatures as I cut the video. Up to 60 now in Charlotte, 63 in Columbia, up to 54 in Greensboro, and that warming trend will continue this morning. There's the radar as we've gone through the past couple of hours. Some showers through the upstate, moving up into the mountain areas, and we're going to continue to see this area of showers continue to gradually work further to the east as we go through this morning. The main line of rain and storm still right there, stretching from eastern Tennessee down in northwest Georgia. Again, as I cut the video, you have some very healthy thunderstorms there on the northwest side of Atlanta that are pretty intense. And then you look further to the south from there through central and southern Alabama down toward the mouth of the Mississippi River. Pretty good area of rain and thunderstorms. And you had pretty good amount of severe weather yesterday, including a number of tornadic issues there in eastern Tennessee and western Alabama. Tornado report in western Tennessee, too. Now that storm system rolling into our region today. Now you notice the main energy is pulling well off to the north. So you've lost a lot of the support for the turning of the winds here for widespread tornadic activity. But having said that, I think we'll see a pretty intense line of thunderstorms and rain roll through the area. There's the high resolution modeling perspective on this as we go through the day. And there is some chance of some strong to severe storms. We have a marginal risk. Might be upgraded in subsequent outlooks depending on what the folks at the Storm Prediction Center think there. It's not a huge threat of severe storms, but there is some threat. And I think damaging winds are your primary severe weather threat. But a brief tornado here or there is definitely a possibility in a couple spots, embedded within probably a pretty intense line of rain and storms. And also, due to the fairly slow movement of this system, some flooding issues could materialize. For instance, there's the Triad area, 1 to 2 plus inches of rain, and I'll just kind of expand this out where you can see the contours, and you notice it is a pretty healthy rain event out there across the region today. So certainly some localized flooding issues could develop. Now tomorrow we're back to dry weather for most of the Carolinas, exception being the coast. That's where some showers hang on. But for the Charlotte, the Triad, the Triangle regions, a dry day and most likelihood with highs in the 50s tomorrow. And then back to full sunshine for Friday. Pretty cool day. There's your Friday high, certainly on the cool side of things. Let me show you the European computer model, and I'll show you this in detail here in just a moment, as well as the GFS. But Saturday we're quiet, and then we watch for the development of a coastal low. There's the European idea with this. The GFS similar overall. That's the 0Z run. I'll show you that in detail with the 6Z run here in just a second. All right, let's start with the European model. This is last night's European. This is valid at 5 o'clock. I'm sorry, this is valid at the early evening hours on Friday evening. All right, and here's your piece of energy diving down in the plains. And this continues to be handled fairly differently with each model run that comes in of every individual model. But this was the latest European. You go out to 108 hours. You have a closed upper air low over Georgia and South Carolina. With this system as it rolls through, you go out a little later in time to 156 hours, and just another piece of energy diving in as a big sharp trough develops over the eastern part of the country. Now, let's go back to 108 hours when you have that closed low over Georgia. Let me show you the 0Z GFS run, and it was really relatively similar, a little more intense overall, but fairly similar. So what did that amount to at the surface? Well, first of all, on the European model, it looked like this right here. Well, I'm sorry, wrong chart. Right there. There was the European solution for Sunday. Low pressure just far enough offshore that you get some precipitation into the immediate coast, but that was about it. On the previous GFS run, you wound up with a scenario something like this. Let's see, there is Sunday, actually this is Saturday evening over into the overnight hours, low pressure offshore. 6 hours later, as you get into Sunday morning, briefly a shot of some snow due to intense rates causing enough cooling throughout the atmospheric column that you kicked rain over to snow. 6 hours later, still that little pocket of snow holding on if you took the model as absolute truth. And then you go 6 hours later, as the rates decrease, you kick over to just some regular old-fashioned rain. So on that 0Z run of the GFS, you had this bullseye of some snow there through parts of eastern North Carolina and northeastern South Carolina. All right. You go to the latest run of the GFS, though, and it's a bit of a different scenario. The features shifted slightly further to the east. It is eased more in the direction of the European model, and the reason is this. You go aloft on the 60 run, and it's a much more progressive system. You notice it is not a closed upper air low on the latest run of the GFS, and so for that reason, the low is a little less intense. It's a little bit more offshore. You get less precipitation trying to fall into the column where it's cold enough for snow. Now, the Canadian run is along those same lines, kind of similar to the European model, a weaker, more offshore low, but boy, the day run of the Canadian yesterday went nuts and put down a lot of snow with this. And again, it's a really tricky deal because it's simply dealing with how does this piece of energy right here behave as it moves through. And it is a little bit different on each model run. So I think we'll continue to see some changes. I think Sunday is a day you need to kind of, as I've done in my forecast today for the Triad area, you need to mention maybe the chance of a little rain or snow. It could very well miss us off to the east, but it's just going to depend on how that piece of upper level energy behaves and interacts with other very active pieces of energy in the pattern aloft as Sunday unfolds. Now, once that system departs, you get a big shot of cold air in here next week. And let me show you the 850 millibar temperatures off of the GFS model right here. This is valid Wednesday of next week. These are 850 temperatures colder than 20 degrees below 0 Celsius through the Tennessee Valley. And you had a reinforcing shot of cold air on the late week period and on the 0Z run of the GFS. That is brutal stuff. Now, the GFS has a habit of overdoing these big blasts of cold air out there in the medium range, so this is probably a bit too extreme. But you get the idea. It's going to be a cold shot of air. It's not as cold on the European model, but it's still pretty chilly. And if you took the previous run of the GFS as absolute truth, this is what it was printing out for low temperatures by Thursday morning of next week. You went out here then to high temperatures by Saturday with that second shot. And then, again, take it with a grain of salt, but there were your low temperatures off of the 0Z run of the GFS valid next Sunday, the Valentine's Day. Or actually, those, actually daytime low temperatures. I didn't grab the right chart. So those are temperatures through the daylight hours, Valentine's Day. Not high temperatures. Those are the lowest temperature through the day. Bottom line is it's a big shot of cold air, but I think it's overdone a bit on the GFS. So the bottom line with all this here is that you have this potential system Sunday, and let me show you one more thing. I meant to show you this. Let's go to the European model. This is valid out to Monday evening. And as you have all this upper level energy around with this big sharp trough overhead, you get on out a little bit later in time. The European tries to pop this low pressure near the coast. And even in the GFS has this to some extent. The Canadian too. Just occasionally as these waves move through, some light snow, some snow showers here and there as you get into the first half of next week with this big piece of upper level energy pivoting through. So it is a very, very complex pattern next week. The one thing that looks certain is it's going to be a cold week. How cold remains to be seen, but I think next week below average temperature-wise, and by mid and late week, way below average temperature-wise. And we'll just have to see what kind of precipitation we can try to wring out in this type of pattern. I know I showed you a lot of stuff. I just wanted to kind of show you what I'm looking at, and we'll keep evaluating as we move forward. All right, that is it for today's edition of the video. Everybody have a great day, and God bless.